Welcome to Off the Record News. I'm your host, Diana Longry. Thank you for tuning in. This program is brought to you live from the SCC studios out of White Bear Lake. And through a cooperative agreement, this program is also simultaneously broadcast to those studios out of the Roseville viewing area, the CTV studios. As a result of this cooperative effort, this program is broadcast live to approximately 28 communities in the Northeast metropolitan area. And so for our viewers this evening on August 31st, 2011, I invite you to call in with any questions or comments that you may have on my show this evening. Because it is a live program, and part of having a live program is inviting you to the table and having you be part of the discussion here this evening. Now, of course, we do rebroadcast at other various times other than our live broadcast. So if you're watching us on a date other than August 31st, please do not call in because, well, we won't be here. However, I still want to hear from you. So you can find me on Facebook. Please friend me on Facebook, send me a message, or you can always pick up the old-fashioned phone and give me a call. I'm in the phone book. I'm listed. There's no unlisted numbers here. Now, of course, for those who watch out of the St. Paul studio, SPNN, of course, Monday evenings is when you get to watch this program, 8 o'clock. We welcome you when you watch the program. And for those of you out of the town square viewing area, out of the Inver Grove Heights area, serving Inver Grove Heights, Mendota Heights, West St. Paul, and South St. Paul, we welcome your viewing on Thursday evenings at 7. Tonight, I'm actually going to look back at some of my thoughts about a previous program that I did, some of my previous travels that I've done, and also share something new with you. And it's all about China. Now, some of you may or may not know that a number of years back, I had a program that was called Inside China. It was a little half-hour program that we had on the air for approximately 3 years. And that program was an opportunity to share some of my travels in China. I certainly had taught conversational English in China on 3 separate occasions. The most recently was in 2004. That was the year before I was, on the campaign trail running for mayor of Maplewood. And once, of course, I won my election, I didn't have time to go back to China and continue to teach conversational English. But it was something that I really enjoyed doing. And as I mentioned, I did on 3 separate occasions. The last time in 2004, I was at the Jiao Tong University. And that particular university has, during the summertime, I think it was about 20,000 students. And during the regular school year, during when it wasn't summer, they had over 40,000 students. The town, you can tell that I'm, of course, from a small town because I still call all towns towns. Whether they're big cities or not, I would call probably New York City a town. But the town that I was in was that of Xi'an. And that little town has approximately 6.5 million people in it, which is approximately the same population as the state of Minnesota. Now, one of the things I want to share with you is I brought with me some film footage of a program of Inside China that I did back in 2006. And the reason I want to share this with you is because I was fortunate enough to be able to talk my youngest son to come on this particular program with me. And the reason I want to show this is because going to China and being able to teach conversational English is something that you can do at any age, whether or not you are a youngster or just young at heart. And so with our particular group, the last group I was with, there were probably about 45 of us who were volunteering for this mission. And we all found out about it through a posting that was on the bulletin board at Macalester College, and a gentleman who was basically helping to facilitate finding volunteers. And the volunteers were primarily from Minnesota and Wisconsin, and they ranged from age, let's see here, age 12 to I think about 82. And my youngest son, who came with me on that particular trip, he was 12, so he was the youngest. And they actually didn't think and anticipate that he was going to be a teacher of conversational English. They had just simply said, yes, you can bring your son with you so that way he doesn't have to stay back at home in the United States. But once he got there, they realized what an excellent opportunity this would be for a youngster of 12 to be able to interact with the other younger students that they had at their elementary and middle school and senior high that they had right there on campus. At this particular university, and it may be the case for many of the universities there in China, but certainly at Jiao Tong University, what they had on campus is that they had a school that was for the children of the people who worked at the university. So if you had employment at the university and you had a child, your child could go to school at that school on campus. And so this particular school had children all the way from the ages of like the kindergarten, first grade age up to age 17. And so my son, Alex, had the opportunity to be able to teach conversational English together with an adult to kids who were from the age of 8 to 17. And it was a wonderful experience. And of course, now this hadn't been his first travels to China. He had been to China once before when he was 8 years old. So this was an excellent opportunity for him to revisit a country that he had been to a number of years before, but perhaps see it in a different light since then he, of course, was 12 years old in 2004. As I mentioned, this film clip is from a program that we did back in 2006. So let's take a look, and then we'll return and talk a little bit more about what it's like to teach conversational English in China. And, well, we maybe have some other film clips as well. So let's take a look. And we'll get the sound out here so that we can hear our film clip. But in the meantime, one of the things I want to mention is that with this particular group, we were all volunteers. And we paid our own way to get over there, paid for our own plane ticket. But once we were there, Jiao Tong University, they took care of our room and board. And that was part of what our compensation was. We weren't paid anything, but we had a place to stay, and we had plenty of food, plenty of really good food to choose from. And one thing I think that's also very interesting about this adventure is it really does broaden your horizons in many ways to see another culture, to talk with the young college students of China and get a perspective from them as to their view of the world, their view of China, and the view of their future. This is very important, I believe, especially for those of us here in the United States where we're trying to figure out how to recreate our country so that we can have good paying, sustainable jobs. Because you hear a lot in the media and in the news sound bites about how there's the exodus of businesses, jobs, and opportunity going to China or going to India or going to other countries. And one of the best ways, I think, to be able to understand really how to either solve some of this exodus out of our country is maybe to understand more about that particular country. Also, of course, to understand why it is that there may be certain imbalances in trade that are impacting our country. And the best way to understand some of these things, of course, is to maybe even travel over there, get to meet some of the people, find out more about what's going on. And so one of the things that I found very fascinating talking with the young people in China is their vision and hopefulness for their future. Because one of the things that I was struck by is that they view education and excelling at education as their ticket to a bright future, that is their way of being able to perhaps not have the same station in life that their parents do, because many of their parents, of course, have very hard manual labor type jobs. And the parents as well see having a very good education for their children as a way for their children to have a better life. It's interesting in that many of the students that I talked to, that they had dreams and visions of being entrepreneurs, of being able to have their own business, of being able to go to Shanghai and be able to get a good paying job that would be very high paying, or that they would be able to be in corporations or in management and be able to be part of the labor team and their management of what was going on. And so with all of this in mind, it was very enlightening, because I think most people do not really think that the college students and the young people in China are thinking about being entrepreneurs, about how are they going to make money. That's one of the things that they have on their list of things to do, is to make money. Very interesting, very fascinating. So let's take a look at our video. I've gotten a message that perhaps they're ready to try it again, so let's take a look. And we're trying to see if we can get the sound out here, because unfortunately, I can do a lot of things, but I'm not very good at lip reading to tell you what was being said. But I know that in this part of this clip, one of the things that we're talking about, that we'll soon be talking about, is the proliferation and wide reach of the internet cafes in China. This again was something that I found extremely fascinating, but again, one of the very important changes in China that I think is really a catalyst for change is the occurrence and proliferation and predominance of the internet, and how it is very accessible. And of course, there are times when the Chinese government certainly might decide that they want to crack down on particular entities like Google or Yahoo or other entities, and try to limit the amount of information that is accessible to the people who are on the internet in China. But again, it's short-lived, because as time goes on, people figure out how to do a workaround. They find other ways to be able to get on the internet, how to have that informational access. And information, you know, there's this old adage that information and knowledge is power. And it's absolutely, I believe, true no matter what country you're looking at. The more information that you have and that you give to the people and to the citizens, the more that citizens can be empowered. Now, I'm hoping that we will be able to have some of our video. We had checked it earlier, and hopefully, well, let's see, we'll take a quick look here. So anyway, so we're going to be calling our technician for some help with the audio. But that doesn't stop me from telling you a few stories about what we did in China. We had a great time. So what we did, let me give you an idea of sort of what our routine was, first of all. And I should mention before I get into this is that if you would like to watch some of the previous episodes of Inside China, and you're thinking, yes, I'd like to see what some of those old episodes were because they sound rather fascinating, and you would like to know, well, you know what? We have decided that they'll be here on SCC TV on Tuesday nights at 7:30. It's a 30-minute program, so mark your calendar for those of you who are in the studio viewing audience of SCC. Tuesday nights at 7:30, you can watch previous episodes of Inside China. We're bringing them back. We've had a number of people asking about them, wondering if we might ever show them again. But let me tell you a little bit about our routine that we would have when we were teaching our conversational English. Well, we would get up about 8 o'clock in the morning and have an opportunity to have a little breakfast. Then we had to be at our classroom at 9 o'clock. And for some of the teachers, volunteer teachers, their classrooms were rather close, so we would just walk to that part of the campus and have our classrooms. Some of the other volunteer teachers of our group, though, including my son Alex, their rooms were clear across the other side of the campus, and because this is a very large college campus, it wasn't an easy walk necessarily, so they actually had a little shuttle bus that would then shuttle them over to the other end of the campus, and it was you know, so they had to get on their bus on time to be able to get to their classroom. So then, of course, we would have our classrooms. They would start, and we would start, and this was the fascinating part, is that the administration of the university, they had a book that they wanted us to use for the class. And it had 15 chapters to it, and it had various exercises, and it was a book that was written more from the perspective of not American, but from English, from England. And so that was also kind of an interesting perspective, too, because some of the words might be a little bit different than the way we would be accustomed to using the words being American. So, but that was a lot of fun, just trying to figure all that out. But this book had 15 chapters to it. They wanted us to go through the chapters from beginning to end, but it didn't matter exactly how we taught it. It's just that we had to get through those chapters. And I suspect that the Chinese administration figured that we would probably be teaching kind of like Chinese teachers, where it was sort of very routine memorization, kind of remote control, and that you just kind of plodded through it very methodically and not with a lot of creativity. And there are times when teaching that way has a value, but sometimes, especially when you're trying to make English as a second language, especially for these college students, making it a second language, one that they can use in a less formal manner, so they have to be able to do it formally as in a formal setting, but also informally in a social setting. Perhaps throwing a little creativity in there so that they can really make the English language a language of their own that they can actually work with certainly might be of a benefit. And so that was part of the challenge, how to be able to balance the expectations that these students had of the type of teaching style that they were accustomed to, and how to balance that with giving them a little bit more challenge, creativity, and inspiration. That's one of the things that I found, that a number of my college students there in China wanted to understand. They wanted to understand this concept of thinking outside of the box. And so I looked at this as a great opportunity to be able to show them how thinking out of the box, so to speak, could be used in looking at English as a second language and talking about conversational English. So, for instance, a chapter would have the various vocabulary words. There would be 20 vocabulary words, and then there would be various sentences, and then you had to put them in the proper sentences to see if you could figure out which word went in the sentence. Sounds pretty simple, doesn't it? Also pretty boring. And we're talking about college students who have learned English their entire educational life, that they have been practicing reading it and writing it, but it's the speaking of it that they need to have help with, and to understand various meanings for the same word. So one of the things that I had my students do, in addition to the typical exercises that were in the chapter, was to say, okay, here are your 20 words. Now I'm going to split you up into groups, and I want you to work as a team, because that was the other thing I found that my students wanted to understand more about, is working together in a team, because they had this vision that when they moved into the corporate world, they were going to have to learn how to work together in a team, and that wasn't necessarily something that they were learning how to do in their educational institutions. And so that was also something they wanted to do. So I figured, let's do it and break them up into teams. They've got 20 words. Now they have to come together and figure out a story or a dialogue using those 20 words, speaking them out loud and in speaking in English in front of the class so that they get some good speaking skills, and then the rest of the people in the class would keep track of whether or not if they could catch those 20 words being spoken as part of the skit. Well, I'll tell you, at first, this caused all kinds of consternation with my students, because they're thinking, oh my goodness, how will we know if we're doing it right? How do we do this? Is there an example? They really, it was sort of like throwing them into the pool in the deep end and saying, I know you can swim, here, show me you can. But once they figured it out that there was no right or wrong answer, that there wasn't any demand that they had to be right, because that was a big concern. Are we doing this right? That once they realized that wasn't the gist of this. The gist of it was to try to figure out how to piece these words together into something they've created of their own. Once they did that, we got some of the most amazing little skits that were, some of them were very funny, some of them were very serious. And it was just dependent upon those students that were in that group and how they were working together to create this little mini project of their own. So now it says we're going to try perhaps another video here in a little bit. So let's take a look. If we're ready to go, try another video and see how if that works. If not, well, I'll be back with another story. Let's take a look.
Hello and welcome to Culture Express. I'm Kathleen Cheng in Beijing. Zhang Yimou's House of Flying Daggers went on release in New York and Los Angeles this week. It's Zhang's second martial art hit to be released in the U.S. in 2004. The previous One Hero topped American box office for the first 2 weeks after its release, and the results for House of Flying Daggers are still to come in. Chinese films have burst onto the international market in a big way, something that's exciting news for the country's entertainment industry. Now let's take a look at what we've got coming up for you today. The charity event in the Chinese capital centers around the premiere of Feng Xiaogang's New Year film, A World Without Thieves. Famous Chinese rocker Xu Wei holds an invitation-only concert for a small group of lucky fans. And on today's Spotlight, we take a look at the soon-to-be-released Hong Kong film Kung Fu Hustle.
Opened by performing 3 songs non-stop, and with a selection of 13 of his familiar songs, the rock singer turned the concert into a gathering of friends. Although only a mini concert, Xu's performance definitely didn't let fans down. Most of the songs played were popular requests by fans. Fans also gave Xu strong support in return. A man from Xu's hometown, Xi'an, had traveled a long way to see his idol, something which moved Xu.
Now, okay. So, of course, now you heard that this pop star, his hometown was Xi'an. Well, of course, that's the same town. Now, they said hometown, didn't they? Anyway, that's it, little town of 6.5 million is exactly the same town that I was teaching in at the Jiaotong University. But you're probably wondering, okay, what is this channel? Well, this is CCTV 9. And a few years back, I was able to get it down off of the satellite, and then things changed. And then recently, I have discovered that they are now, of course, having many of their broadcasts on the internet. So if you are interested and you want to watch TV from China in English, you can go on the internet and you can watch it video streaming. It's amazing what can happen in this time of technology. So even though you may not be able to travel to China yourself or to be able to find out more about their culture or what their thoughts are about the world and their spin on the news of world happenings, you may not be able to go there to witness it firsthand. You know, you can watch it with the miracle of the internet. And again, I heard this guy not too long ago talking about how the world now today has become flat because with the way that we're all connected with technology, it doesn't make much difference if you're here in Minnesota or you're in China. You're all connected by certainly the electronic waves in the air and the technology that we have that connects us all. Now, I understand that we have a caller on the line joining us here this evening. Caller, thank you for calling in this evening. Questions or comments tonight?
Mayor Longry, I'm so happy you're discussing China and the culture of China because there's so little of that I see on the evening news, on TV shows, and yet everybody in the back of their mind has a sense that China is becoming a major world power, major economic power, major political power. Now, you were over there for a few years, and it is disappointing to see that in the local schools, they're barely starting to scratch the surface to teach the culture or the language of the Chinese. And I don't know, I think they're really depriving kids of a great opportunity to advance and get have an opportunity. Another failure of the good old boys out here with blinders on their eyes. Good to see that elected official like you has your eyes wide open. But one thing maybe you could talk about is the entrepreneurial spirit. I go out here in St. Paul and everybody's almost afraid to be an entrepreneur. It's kind of like been driven out of the culture. Did you see that entrepreneurial spirit in China when you were there? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for those questions. And I will tell you, I agree. I think we should be teaching Chinese as in our schools and have it as a language option to choose from. That when our children are learning a second or third language, that they have more to choose from than just Spanish, German, or French. Some cases they don't even have French anymore. I think Chinese is actually a language that should be one of the choices because, again, going back to that idea that our world is becoming more and more flat, I think it is very important, certainly for the young people of the United States today, to be not only aware of the culture of China, but also to be aware of the language. And I think that in the future, we're going to have to be more cognizant of what else is going on in the rest of the world when it comes to being able to communicate with people using their language as well. Now, one interesting thing about all of this is sometimes people say, well, why are people going over to China to teach conversational English? Well, the first time that I went to China was actually not to teach conversational English, but it was to go over there as a tour group because, well, I wanted to see the Yangtze River before it was the banks were flooded as a result of the building of the Three Gorges Dam. And so that was my original motivation to go over there. But our tour guide on that trip, he was a gentleman who was actually from Australia, and he had spent many, many years in China and had become now a travel guide, and he was very fluent in speaking Chinese, but he told us that at that time, and that was about in 2000, that at that time that China's, one of their goals was to become the largest English-speaking country in the world, and that they set their goal for 25 years, that within 25 years they would become the largest English-speaking country in the world. With that said, I think that it still is important that our young people of our nation, certainly some of them anyway, decide to take a second language that is Chinese. And I think that will certainly help them find a place for a future in business, business law, many other areas as well. I think that might be helpful in. Another question that you had about that entrepreneurial spirit. A lot of folks, they think, well, okay, now China's a communist country, right? Well, I suppose that's what people, it's labeled as. Personally, I label it more as sort of a dictatorship of a type. Because it's not really the same as the communist model, at least from what I could tell, that is the traditional communist model. A lot of times people think that in China, well, if you are, if you want your child to go to school, that you would think it would be free education. Quite frankly, it's only free education up to grade 6. If you want your child to go to school beyond 6th grade, parents have to pay for it. Healthcare, well, there are little pharmacies on the streets with the red, first aid cross on it. But you go in there and you pay for your medicine as you go. It's very different than what most people would think. They would think that if it's a communist country, everybody gets whatever it is that they need by the government, and it's not really that way in China. But there's a lot of regulation. And it's interesting when you're looking at the government-owned stores versus the entrepreneurs who have their own little shops or their own little booths, is that the government stores, they're very inflexible when it comes to their pricing. Say, for instance, it's a clothing store or a tea shop, and if it's a government-owned tea shop or clothing store or whatever, they have only certain prices that they can charge for things, and that if that item doesn't sell at that price, they don't mark it down for sale. It stays at that price, and it just stays there in the inventory for, I don't know, maybe forever, for I don't really know. But I can give you a really good example of this, is that I was there, I think it was maybe the trip in 2002, the first time I was teaching conversational English. And I found there was this little shop, this store, selling clothing, a government-run clothing shop. And I went in there, and they had this particular style of shirt that I liked. I really liked it a lot. And it was the same, you know, cut, but they had like 4 different shades or colors to choose from. So I thought, you know, I'm just going to buy 2. One of this color, one of that color. And I didn't get the other 2 colors. Well, you know, I come back to the United States here, I'm thinking to myself, shoot, you know, I really wished I would have gotten those other 2. I should have done it when I was there. Well, it turns out I was fortunate enough to be able to go back to China the next year to teach conversational English again. Now, it was on a different part of town, different end of Xi'an, a different university. But I thought to myself, I wonder, in this big city, this big town, can I find that store again? And of course, I relied upon a little trick, so to speak, that I learned the first couple times I was there, is that if you have the business card of a hotel or some business or establishment or whatever, and you simply give it to a taxi cab driver, even though you don't speak much Chinese and they don't speak any English, you can give them this little business card, and that most of these businesses, especially the hotels, will have on the back of them a little bit more information for the taxi cab driver, so no matter where you are in the city, all you have to do is hand this to your taxi cab driver, and he can bring you right there. So I happen to have had the business card for the hotel that I had stayed at previously, the previous trip. And so I gave it to the taxi cab driver thinking, okay, let's see if this works, if I can find that shop. That was my mission. So he looked at the card, and took us about a half hour to get all the way from one end of the city to the other end of the city. And we got there, and so here he dropped me off at this hotel. And I'm thinking, you know, getting my bearings, I'm thinking, oh, I think if I go down this way, a little ways, a few stores down, I think that's where it was. Wouldn't you know, I found it. That government run clothing shop was still there. So I go inside. It didn't look like much had changed whatsoever from the last time I was there a year before. Because keep in mind, the shops that aren't the government stores, they have flexibility to change their prices, to dicker with their clients and customers, to move their inventory, because they're in it to be entrepreneurs, getting back to that entrepreneurial spirit. They're into moving that inventory so that they can make money. Okay, well, the government-run stores they don't have that same motivation. And so I go into this store, and I'm thinking, well, I think if I go back to the back, that's where the clothes rack was for those shirts that I had bought the year before. Wouldn't you know, they were still all there, the same rack, set up the same way. I'm sure they must have sold 1 or 2, but it didn't look like it had changed much in the whole year that had gone by. And there was my size. I just picked up one of this and one of that, the 2 colors I hadn't bought the year before, checked out, and there you go. And I thought, well, isn't this just sort of an interesting contrast between the government-owned stores and the ones that aren't the government-owned stores? Because I am sure that if it would have been a shop that wasn't a government-owned shop, that, of course, the inventory would have been all totally different. it would have been, you know, just like it is here in our stores. You know, they, as soon as it's a new season, well, out with the old, in with the new. I mean, that's how you keep people coming in for something new. Another interesting thing about these government owned stores, whether or not if it's a grocery store or food or a clothing store, any kind of government owned store, is that they have a very unique way of checking you out of the store. Is that you take the items you want to buy and you bring them to a clerk who then hand fills out a slip for you and writes what they are down. Then you go to the next station, which is where the cash register is, and you pay for your purchases with your little receipt that's all been written out. And then they have somebody standing at the door checking your receipt to make sure you have a paid receipt, and checking your bags to make sure what's in your bag is what's on your receipt. Huh. Sounds and very kind of reminiscent to Sam's Club now, doesn't it? But anyway, I found that very fascinating as well. So, getting back to that entrepreneurial spirit, for those of you who like to bargain and to dicker a little bit and would like to experience that, the best place to do it, if you happen to be in Xi'an, is to go to the Muslim Bazaar. And of course, this is an area that is near the Muslim mosque. It's in a particular area and neighborhood of Xi'an, because they have different areas that are different neighborhoods, just like, you know, here in our cities. And this market, it's a free market, and these people who have their shops there and their booths there, they have all kinds of items to sell, and it could be artwork, knickknacks, clothing. Boy, I'll tell you, my sons, the things that they were most interested in was all the different swords. So I can't begin to tell you the number of swords that we brought home from China. I'm sure between my two sons and the two different trips that the two of them were on over there, we must have a collection of at least 20 swords between the two of them. All the way from little short ones to really big long ones with decorative whatever. And I think I even have one that I brought on one show that has a little battery on it, and if you press the button, that the eyes of the dragon in the handle actually glow. So, you know, it's kind of one of those fun swords. Nothing real serious, of course. Anyway, but if you go to this market, you will find that there is a wide variety of things to be able to purchase. And if you like to try to buy some jade jewelry, you will find it there. You want to have hand-painted scrolls, you will find that there. You want to have silk scarves. That was a real favorite of a lot of my friends, because at the time I worked at Target Corporation. And so there were a number of the ladies that I worked with that when they heard that I was going to China, they wanted to have some of those silk scarves, because they like to, you know, tie them around their neck as part of their suit. And you could get them at a very extremely reasonable price, and there was a wide variety of hundreds of colors and shades and patterns. It was just a lot of fun, just, you know, having a whole handful of those and sticking those in your suitcase after you brought them home, you know, after you bought them, and then to bring them home with you. But at this market, if, like, say, for instance, you found let's say you found, I can give you a good example, is that at the time my boys were very interested in learning how to do calligraphy. So you can buy these sets that have the inkstone in them, together with the brush and some of your other tools you need for calligraphy. And many of the vendors would have this same set that you could use and to purchase. And of course, they all wanted to sell their item. So if you would go to the first vendor and look, and you'd be kind of interested in it, they would say, you know, they would write on a piece of paper the number of yuan that they were asking, and then you would go, no, that's too much, and then you would put down a much lower number than they wrote down, and then they would, of course, say, no, too low, and then they would write a different number, and then, you go back and forth like this, and then eventually, if you just thought that there wasn't enough movement for you, you could always say, nah, boo yao, don't want. And then you go to somebody else just a little ways down who's been watching the negotiations all the time, okay? And they've been watching the negotiations. They know they have the same thing, and they would see this as an opportunity to make that sale. So, of course, then they have the item you've just been looking at. They pick it up, and they hold it out to you to show you, they've got one too, and then they tell you what their price is, see? So then, so by the time you get done, you could get a very good bargain, and everybody felt like that it worked out fine because they know what their bottom line is, and you know what you would like to get it for, and you go away with your item, they come away with your money, and that's the end of it. But I would say that one of the people that I saw that was the most successful at this was my youngest son, because he had this way of being able to, at a young age, of batting his eyes and really putting on the big show of negotiating. And I think they really they really had a lot of fun with that. And I suspect that some of them gave him an even better deal than they would have given anybody, simply because they just thought that, he gave it a good effort, that he was doing the best he could, and, well, they would, help him out a little bit. So it was a lot of fun watching that. Now, I don't know if we want to try a little bit more video. Well, let's see if we can move that the DVD ahead a little bit, so that we can maybe show some other film clips. Again, now this is off of CCTV 9, and I will tell you that these particular film clips from CCTV 9 are from December 2004, so they're rather old, but it still gives you a flavor of what you can see if you go to look at CCTV 9 today on the internet and watch it live streaming. And so if you, maybe today, you go on the internet and you watch C-SPAN, for instance, and you're very familiar with watching C-SPAN and watching our Congress in action right there on the internet, well, it's the same thing. You can go right there to CCTV 9 and you can watch the newscasts from China. There, it's in English. You can watch other the programs that they have. They have some cultural programs. There's also occasionally programs talking about some of the cultural things. I know that I have in my archives a program where they talked about, the silk industry and how it developed in China, in the history of that. Again, something very fascinating. In our one of the things that when we were there in 2004, we did have a TV in our room that the college provided for us, and that was one of the one of the channels that was available for watching was CCTV 9, and I understand that I think it's broadcast throughout most of China, and it is in English. And a lot of the students that I worked with, they liked watching CCTV 9 because it gave them an opportunity of being able to hear the English language. And it was actually one of the few opportunities that they had of being able to hear the English language and to hear how people were speaking in English. And yet it is a Chinese broadcast. So let's take a look and see if we have a little bit of a film clip, and then we don't have much time left. We'll return.
Converted singer expressed his appreciation with some simple yet heartfelt words.
There's still a long road waiting for me. Let's go through it together and work hard together.
Xu Wei's fourth album, Every Moment is Brand New, will be released on December the 10th. It's expected to be a simple and transparent album focusing on the music itself, and she will continue to use his direct and passionate voice to give his loyal fans a dose of winter confidence. Xu Wei has also promised to present a large-scale ticket-selling concert next year to cater to the needs of more fans.
One of the things I found very fascinating and fun when I was in China is going into some of these stores where they were selling music, CDs, music CDs. Now, I did not know various Chinese bands at all. I don't know anything about the Chinese pop scene or who any of the big stars are at all. But one thing that I found was very fascinating is that the cover artwork of these CDs is much the same way as it is in the United States. So, if you are a fan of heavy metal, for instance, those of you out there know what I mean. You know what those covers of the heavy metal or the hard rock music groups, the way the artwork looks on those CDs covers. You know what it looks like? You probably wouldn't even have to hear it, and you go, oh, that's what that genre is? That's that type of music. Well, believe it or not, it's kind of the same way in China. So, now of course, I'm letting you in on a little secret here. I sort of like a little bit more of a tempo beat to my rock music, so if it's got a little bit more of a hard rock edge to it, let's take it on. Okay. So, when I was in China, that was the kind of artwork that I was looking for. And I came back home, and it was amazing. I found some really neat music I would have never found otherwise, other than to simply take a chance by looking at the artwork and saying, yeah, I think that artwork is of interest to me and might actually be the type of music I'm looking for. Now, of course, as you heard in this particular little clip we had, this gentleman has a little bit more of a folk music sound to him, but it sounds like he's a very popular fellow, and I'm sure, again, a person could easily, again, if you were listening to CTV9 and they were talking about some of the musical artists and you thought, gee, I'd like to get some of that music, I would be willing to bet that if you put in the name into Google and did a search, you would be actually able to find some place on the internet where you could purchase their music. Again, our world has become flat. Now let's see if our crew in the back can move this forward and see if we got some other type of information here from CCTV9. So let's take a look.
Warm Springs and tens of thousands of Hong Kong residents held a public memorial to pay tribute to him at the Hong Kong Stadium. In a versatile career, Wang composed music, acted, directed, wrote scripts, and hosted talk shows, but is best known for his cantopop lyrics. The lyricist was struck down by cancer at age 64. The multimedia music drama Eternal Leslie Chang, originally named Closer Than Zero Distance, will be staged at Beijing's Poly Theater from January 13 to 16 next year. Lead actor Benny Chen attended a press conference on Wednesday in Beijing. There will be some changes in the storyline from the previous Shanghai performance. Chen is now receiving acupuncture to lose weight in order to make him look more like Leslie. Taiwan ballet singer Fei Yuqing's solo concert took place at the Shanghai Grand Stage recently. Without dazzling costumes or stage designs, the mature singer simply displayed the purity of his voice. Since entering the entertainment world at age 17, Fei's particular charm has been his combination of enchanting love ballads with a friendly manner. Most of his classic numbers have been theme songs for TV dramas. 6 artists received the presidential salute for their contributions to America.
So, of course, when I was in China, on all the various times I was there, I had the opportunity of going to any number of entertainment programs that, you know, span the range from very traditional to more modern. And the Chinese people certainly appeared to me to enjoy going out and watching people doing acting or singing. It was something that was very fascinating to watch. There was one such event that I went to that my two sons and I, we decided this was on one of our trips, I think probably in 2003, I suppose. Anyway, we decided to go out on our own and separate from our group, go to somewhere else for the evening and find something new and different. And so we found such a entertainment venue where there was going to be singing and some acrobatic events and whatever. Well, it turned out we were the only Caucasians in the whole place, and they found that to be a very novel event because actually this place had been recommended to us by the hotel staff, and so I suspect that this was not necessarily very common to have Caucasian folks show up for this event. But anyway, they put us right in the front, and it happened to be an evening where I think there was a special night out for like the high school seniors or something. I mean, that's the way it looked, because there was this group of 16, 17-year-old boys and girls that came to this event. They had chaperones, and so they had all the girls at one table and all the boys at the other table, and yet clearly they were all part of a group, and they had their chaperones, but they had all the girls at one table, all the boys at the other. And it was very fascinating because they all had their sneakers on and their best blue jeans, and that was how they were dressing out, their best dress for going out. Now I understand we have one quick call. We have only 2 minutes left. Caller, welcome to the program.
Mayor Longry, I seen a show that you used to do on China. It was on every week. Wonderful show. I hardly ever missed it. Are you doing anything more I can watch about China? And when would that be on? Thank you.
Thank you very much, caller. And earlier in the program, I did mention that we've had a number of people looking for reruns of the previous program, and we are indeed putting it back on the air for a short time, and that's here in the SCC viewing area. That's Tuesday nights at 7:30. And there we go. Hopefully the caller will hear the information on Tuesday at 7:30 here in the SCC viewing area. And one of the things I want to just close out the program with is that if you think you would like to find out more about teaching conversational English in China, it's a great opportunity. It's a lot of fun, and if you have anywhere from 2 to 5 weeks, there are programs that are available. I would suggest the first way that you can maybe find out more about this opportunity is simply go on the internet, do a Google search for conversational English programs China, and you may indeed find a program that way. Certainly you can contact me on Facebook. I do have a couple of other organizations that I know of who are or have been in the past engaged in getting volunteers for these types of programs. So I hope you've enjoyed a little bit of my discussions this evening about China and some of my insight and the opportunities that I was able to have over there as part of my teaching conversational English. It's all part of understanding our fellow citizens of the world and knowing how we can best all fit in this flat world. Thank you very much, and tune in again next week where we'll have a new topic, new issue, something fresh, something different. Bye-bye.